This moment, everything changed. Prince Harry, sitting in that courtroom, finally cracks under the weight of it all. This isn't just another royal scandal, it's the moment everything Harry believed about his life, love, and family came crumbling down. What seemed like a slow-moving legal case suddenly became the most intimate, raw moment of his life. His world turned upside down in the space of a few chilling words. Before moving forward, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for daily updates. The judge's voice reverberated through the silent courtroom. Make him cry when discussing Diana. And that's exactly what happened. Harry, ever so composed, suddenly lost all his poise. A man who had carried himself with dignity for years broke down in an instant, and in front of millions. The world saw it. The facade he'd held up for so long shattered, and the reality hit him with full force. This wasn't just about grief anymore, it was about something deeper, something far darker. His mother's tragic death, was it merely a tool in someone else's larger scheme? His face, usually so controlled, twisted with pain. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. The raw vulnerability of a man who had been hurt more deeply than anyone could imagine was exposed in front of the world. But was this grief, or something far more sinister? What if his pain had been used? Had his sorrow been weaponized, commodified for the public's consumption? And as the judge continued, the messages began to reveal even more than anyone anticipated. Not just Harry's grief, but his very identity. His every emotion had been managed, crafted, and carefully manipulated. What happens when a man discovers the pain he thought was his own was never truly his? The judge continued reading the private messages aloud. The truth began to unfold not just about Harry, but about Meghan. She was no longer the helpless victim trying to escape a cold monarchy. She had become something much more strategic. Meghan wasn't just fighting for herself, she was playing the long game. Every word she spoke, every action she took, was carefully planned for public consumption. But this wasn't a game Harry had signed up for. His life, his pain had become part of her grand narrative, a story being told for the cameras, for the world to watch. As the judge read further, the court learned that Meghan wasn't simply a bystander. She was orchestrating everything. Every emotional moment, every tear, every statement Harry had ever made was scripted, planned, and executed for maximum impact. She was controlling the narrative. His grief wasn't just his grief anymore. It had been shaped into something more marketable, more consumable. But how deep did this go? Had he been aware that his own pain had been twisted into a storyline for the world to follow? The messages kept coming. Each one exposed another layer of manipulation, another piece of Harry's emotional life turned into content. Meghan had taken Harry's most private moments, the things he thought were safe, protected, and turned them into tools for her own gain. A family dinner was now a potential viral moment. Harry's struggles, his pain, his memories, all of them were becoming part of a grand emotional strategy. And Harry, he had been caught in the middle of it all, unable to escape the story that was being written around him. What happens when a man discovers the pain he thought was his own was never truly his? The defense team continued to present even more damning evidence. Meghan's behind-the-scenes strategy was laid bare. Every conversation she had, every text she sent, was part of the plan. It wasn't just about managing Harry's grief, it was about managing Harry himself. The man who had once been the face of rebellion against the monarchy was now being manipulated on a level he hadn't seen coming. The courtroom felt suffocating, the air thick with tension, as Harry's face grew blank. He couldn't look away from the evidence. It was too much, too real. And yet, he had no choice but to sit there. As his entire world was dismantled in front of him, Meghan had taken control of every part of their relationship. From the way Harry spoke about his mother's death, to the public-facing interviews he had given, to the very emotions he had expressed, everything had been carefully crafted for maximum effect. It was no longer about Harry's pain, it was about how to make that pain resonate with the public. But at what cost? Had Meghan seen him as a partner, a husband? Or had she simply seen him as another tool to push her narrative forward? What happens when the person you trusted most becomes the one who manipulates your deepest wounds? As the judge continued reading, the courtroom was quiet. The defense wasn't just attacking Harry's public image, it was attacking his very sense of self. Every piece of private information, every moment of emotional vulnerability was being pulled into the light. And what did that reveal? A man who had been manipulated by the very person he trusted most. Harry was no longer the prince fighting for his family. He was the man who had been used, his emotions turned into a product. Outside the courtroom, the reaction was swift and unforgiving. Headlines screamed across the world's media. Prince Harry breaks down in court. Shocking revelations expose Meghan's role in controlling Harry. The media couldn't get enough. The world had seen Harry vulnerable, broken. The emotional facade he'd built for years had finally come crashing down. But what did this mean for him? Was this the end of the road? Was this the moment that would define his life forever? Or was this just the beginning of something far more destructive? Can a man truly be free when his every emotion is scripted for him? The courtroom began to focus on the messages about the royal family. It wasn't just about Harry's pain anymore, it was about how Meghan had used the royal family as a pawn in her own game. Meghan had seen the royal family not as family, but as players to be manipulated for the sake of their brand. Harry's relationship with William, that was just another emotional beat to amplify. Catherine's perfect image, that was a threat to the narrative, something to be broken down. The Queen, she wasn't a mother figure, she was an icon to be reinterpreted. The message was clear, Meghan was using the royal family to advance her own narrative. But at what cost? What did that mean for Harry? Was he just another pawn in Meghan's grand plan? As the judge continued reading, the full scale of the betrayal became apparent. Harry's relationship with his family wasn't just strained, it had been weaponized. Every conversation about his family had been turned into content, manipulated, and twisted to fit Meghan's narrative. But Harry didn't just lose his family, he lost himself. He lost the truth of who he was. His story had been hijacked by someone else. And as the final messages were read, Harry's breakdown became complete. He wasn't just grieving for his mother, he was grieving for everything he had lost in this process. His own identity, his family, his love for Meghan, everything had been manipulated and turned into something he never signed up for. What happens when a prince realizes he's no longer the man in control of his own story? The courtroom fell into a profound silence. The judge asked for a break, but Harry didn't move. He sat still, lost in thought. What had just happened? What had he just heard? How could he ever come back from this? The world outside was waiting for answers, but Harry's journey was far from over. The fallout was just beginning. His life, his grief, his marriage, everything was under public scrutiny now. And as the courtroom doors closed, the real question emerged. What happens when everything you thought you knew about yourself turns out to be a lie? The final break ended, and the courtroom resumed. The question remained, could Harry ever truly recover from this? Or was this the end of his journey altogether? The fallout has just begun.